Check. 1, 2, 3.
The D. Brief. This is the D Brief.
Your guide to Detroit.
Your guide to Detroit's
arts and entertainment scene.
This is the D
Brief.
Hello and welcome to the Debrief. I am your co-host. My name is Seth Ressler.
I'm Becky Scarcello.
And I'm Jag.
All right, guys, it is another Thursday, which means we're going to do another in-depth interview. This is where we sit down and talk to somebody who really knows what's going on, making things happen in the Detroit
Movers
arts
and shakers.
entertainment scene. Yeah, exactly.
A macher, as you might say in Yiddish.
There
yes,
you go.
well, I might.
Of course, I might.
You never know. It could happen. Anyway, today we are sitting down with Peter Croce. He is a musician, a DJ, a producer. He's got his own record label, Rocksteady Disco, and he's the label manager at another one. That's a lot of work there.
He's a busy guy.
He is. He's working over at Motor City Wines, too. Peter, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Let's start with, tell us what you do. I mean, you're making music. Tell us a little bit about the music that you make.
Yeah, I guess I'm intimately involved in the electronic and kind of sound system music culture and industry. I split my time between DJing parties, throwing parties, making music and putting that out either on my own labels or on other labels, and A&Ring, finding new music to put out on my own labels, whether they're in Detroit or otherwise. And then yeah, I mean, that kind of occupies the majority of my time. I do this full time.
Do you sleep?
Yeah. I sleep more than most DJs, actually.
Okay.
I remember I was listening to my friend Ryan on this show, and he was saying all the fun happens after 2 a.m. I'm like, yeah, there's some fun that happens after 2 a.m. without a doubt.
Peter and I have actually talked about a dream of opening up a club that's for grown-ups, where the dance party starts at like 7 p.m.
I love day parties.
Yes.
Oh, matinee.
Darties.
Yeah, darties.
Here's the problem. If I drink alcohol at like 2 o'clock in the afternoon,
going to
Nap
bed.
time.
Right.
Absolutely. I'm the same way.
I'll have a beer watching a game at like 2 in the afternoon, and I'm asleep at 5:30. Like, oh, what just happened?
I know.
So how does this work? You're like 5 years old and you're like, I want to throw parties every day when I get older. Like, how do
I want to be a fireman. I want to be a party thrower.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, I have an undergraduate degree in teaching and a master's degree in social work. So it took until I was about 24 years old, really, to go full time with it. It's a completely different landscape. Whenever you talk to people who've been in the industry a lot longer, whether it's the 70s or 80s or 90s, they all got into it in a similar way, where they were going to certain clubs and parties because just dance culture was a lot more of a thing. Or they were listening to the Electrifying Mojo, and that's how they started getting into dance music and Kraftwerk and Juan Atkins and all this. Myself, being 28 years old and raised in the suburbs, I got into it through the internet, listening to internet radio like Rinse FM out of the UK, and it just happened really organically. Basically what happens was when I went off to undergrad, I was in some bands playing electric bass, and the bands all went to different universities, and I just kept collecting CDs and records and everything. And some friends were like, wow, you have a lot of really good music. Why don't you put some playlists together for some parties we're throwing? And then after I graduated, I was like, hey, I should probably get 2 turntables so I can mix them together. And that's really when, I wouldn't consider what I did in undergrad DJing until after I graduated and started to learn how to mix it up.
And beat match and all that.
Yeah, exactly.
I wanted to do that as a kid, and I sort of failed, which is how I wound up in radio.
It's a lot easier to talk over the music than create it and play it.
Right.
I was the same way.
Sure.
Well, the other problem is, I don't know if you've ever seen The Jerk, like that beginning scene.
Oh,
where
yes.
Martin started, like that was me. So it just wasn't happening.
I have not seen that movie.
I know you.
Well, I got super
course you
lucky. I mean, my dad was a professional drummer.
Oh.
My mom has incredible music taste and rhythm and really
So
good
it's in your
pitch.
blood.
Yeah.
I mean,
It
I got
wasn't,
so
why are you going
lucky.
into music? What are you doing with your life? They understood.
No, they were hyped. My dad, to this day, he's like, I don't care that you're not using your master's degree. You're living your best life, son.
And I have to say,
Yes.
his parents are the cutest, and they still come to every gig they can.
Yeah,
Nice.
totally.
They're right there on the dance floor.
Do you still remember your first great segue where you're like, oh my God, that's awesome. These 2 songs sound
Yeah,
great
it's like
together?
flying.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing. You're like, I'm kind of making a new song from multiple songs.
What was it? What do I?
I mean, it was just some, I can't really remember. I mean, it's definitely some house music stuff. I know that I bought it from a DJ who was my mentor. He goes by the name AK DJ. and he just was blowing out a bunch of records, and it just kind of hooked me up. But that was at the time when I could like afford like 9 records.
Yeah.
And I don't really play any of those anymore because I can't remember the names. But I mean, like, God, I got sick of those. But you get really good at mixing those 9 records.
And let's not assume that people know what goes into this. I mean, explain exactly how it works. When you've got 2 turntables, what's the equipment? How do you actually mix and make songs go together? Yeah,
it seems like especially in kind of Spotify culture, there's a lot of misconceptions about what DJs do. A lot of people think that we're just kind of a on-demand jukebox, and that we have every song ever created on every corner of the globe.
But because Spotify does.
Yeah, well, they don't even have everything. I don't want to get too esoteric here. But I can stump them. All right, no. But jokes aside, when I play, I'm really interested. I try to keep it as analog as possible. I have a nice handmade in Australia analog mixer, and I play with a couple turntables, and then a couple what are called CDJs, which are just digital turntables.
I had the Pioneer CDJ 500s, like the first model, and I never used them. I remember selling them because I couldn't.
Couldn't figure it out.
I couldn't figure it out.
Well, I call them dub plate machines, and for those that don't know, a dub plate is a record made out of acetate, and it was like a test pressing. Someone would cut like 3 acetates or dub plates to give to DJs to test before they were like, should we press 1,000 of these or 10,000 of these? And if the dance floor reacted to the acetates, the dub plates, then they would know, all right, we need to go press with this. And so I use the CDJs to play things that are unreleased.
Okay.
I always try to play vinyl as much as I can, and then keep the CDJs for a record that I want to put out, but I want to make sure the dance floor likes it. You know what I mean? Or I even just do exclusive stuff just for myself and my friends. Just
inside scoop.
Yeah, inside scoop.
Yeah.
Peter, let me ask you this: as a former radio programmer, I know Seth this too. The idea, radio philosophy is, if you're going to play an unfamiliar record or a record you're not sure it's, you've got to protect it by playing really big, familiar stuff around it. Is it the same when you're DJing in a concert like that?
In a lot of ways. And that kind of brings up an interesting point. There's so many different kinds of parties. There's some people who are strictly looking to be educated all night, which can be really, really special. I think what's cool about Rocksteady Disco and the people I roll with is we don't play pop music, but we manage to occupy this really cool space between very deep and esoteric and underground, but still accessible to people who don't know the difference between house and techno and rare groove and funk, or you know what I mean? And that's been such I think part of what makes what we do really special and cool is, I have a residency at the Virgin Hotel in Chicago. I go there once a month. I get to play this like 26-story rooftop bar. It's really, really fun. And they get such a cool crowd. I can jump around from Brazilian music to music from Chicago, Detroit, New York, to African music, and people are about it. And I don't have to play Drake ever.
Which a lot of people are thankful for. Let me follow up on something you asked, because I think a lot of people listening are asking the same question that I am right now. Very quickly, what is the difference between house and techno?
Oh, yes. Oh, man, this is a pretty unpopular opinion, but not much.
Just being real.
In general, house music, it sounds like beefier disco. Disco with drum machines, because there was a point where the industry crashed. I think we're still in it, actually. And it's pretty hard to afford orchestras.
Right.
Sure.
So people started sampling orchestras and playing them on synthesizers. But house definitely has that disco's revenge sound. And techno definitely has more of a synthesized, mechanical, robotic sound. And you can play them both in the same night.
Right.
Let me ask, because there must be a certain amount of reading the room when you're performing. And we've talked to other artists about this, whether it's stand-up comedians or things like that. I mean, how do you read the room? And when you do, how do you know if something's working or if it's not going to work? What do you do in that moment? Yeah, I feel like that's getting comfortable in that is really a skill set into itself. A lot of it is just you just got to try and not freak out because we, like I said, we play disco, we play Afrobeat, we play house, we play techno, we play jazz, and some people want a certain thing all night, some people want a different thing all night, and I really think you spend the first little bit of your set feeling that out. Do people want more disco? Do people want more techno?
And then you just kind of go from there, and you try not to get too caught up, because then you're obviously just throwing things at a wall and hoping it sticks.
You're trying too hard.
Right.
Yeah, you're trying too hard. Yeah,
Right.
it loses that joy and that effortlessness.
I feel, Peter, like you have, your social work degree. I feel like it hugely influences how you
you're
run your
using that
parties.
master's.
Yeah. So
Yeah, mom and dad. No,
no, really.
no, I know. Jokes aside,
it's about people and.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a huge. You're totally right. The things that make a good DJ, as far as I'm concerned, is having really good music, and really being able to read a room. I would rather hear somebody who can't beat match very well, but is very much in tune with what's happening out on the other side of the decks.
Right.
So,
I think that is a suspension a little bit of your own ego too, where you're not going and saying, "This is the party I want to throw." Damn it, all of you, fall in line. You're more about the positivity and the vibe and the feeling of the crowd. So
I try to be.
Yeah.
Even me,
Thank you.
I started doing weddings on the side just for a few bucks on the side, and I always try to ask
God bless you.
the bride and groom, like, what year did you graduate high school? Because
That's a good question.
that's going to be whether I play 80s or 90s or 2000s. I did one Saturday night, and they were young. Her coworkers asked for a Spice Girls wannabe and Gangnam Style, and after I almost fell off my stool, I was like, "Hey, this is what they want.
Okay.
Read the room."
So when we say you're reading the room, what are you looking at? Are you looking at the age of the audience? Are you looking at the ethnicity? Are
Body
you looking
language.
at the neighborhood that they're in?
That's a great question. I am mostly looking for how much people are moving on the dance floor.
Okay.
And it sounds too really simple, but are people on their phones?
That's
Right.
a great
You can see.
indicator.
Are their face kind of lit up from their
Yes.
screen being on? Ideally we could have a no phones on the dance floor rule, because it'll be hilarious, because you'll have a corner of the dance floor having the time of their lives while there's other people talking and on their phones. But I'm mostly reading to see. I mean, you know when you clear a dance floor,
Right. Yeah. As you go from city to city or even country to country, because
Yeah.
I know you've gone internationally.
Yeah.
How are rooms different? Or
Yeah, I had a
audiences
really interesting experience with that in Korea, where I was playing this really, really cool club called Contra, and it was a party called Homework. These really, really great local DJs. It was only their second party they've ever threw, but it was incredible. And they were playing before me. They were mostly playing house, and it was kind of dark, kind of deep stuff. And I basically spent the first 4 songs playing things that were cohesive, but it was still kind of like an Afro house cut into a disco cut into just a straight up kind of Detroit style house cut. And I noticed as soon as I started playing the disco cut, I lost them. Nobody left the dance floor, but I could just feel the energy immediately
Go
go
down.
down. I was like, all right, we're going to stick away from the jazz, funk, and disco at least for an hour.
Do you exit quickly? Because
No, actually, I think that's a big mistake. I really do think you should just don't play the song all the way out, but if you know the cool part of the song is still 2.5 minutes away,
Right.
you really just got to stick with your guns.
Interesting.
You're braver
Okay.
than I am.
Yeah.
I would have been like,
I bail.
Because at the same time, I really want to I've done that before, and it's just felt awkward.
Right.
And you just feel like you lose control of the room, and you feel there's this deflated energy. At very least, you're giving credence to the song, at least when you don't mix it super fast.
Peter, a lot of times artists talk about playing overseas and having just intense, insane crowds in different countries, more so than American crowds. Did you find that all when you were on the other side of the world, that the crowds were more into it, less into it, just different?
In Seoul, they were definitely more into it, but the club wasn't really any bigger than the clubs here. It was just a different kind of energy. I think there's a couple things in Detroit, which I'm happy to call a city my home. I love Detroit, but Detroiters are spoiled. Very good musicians and DJs playing everywhere all the time for very cheap.
Yep.
And so we are just legitimately spoiled. And moving to Chicago taught me that in a very big way. And the other thing is, I don't know. It just in Seoul, you can party past 2 a.m. I really do believe we're not doing jazz clubs, dance clubs, whatever, any services, turning the lights on at 1:59 and screaming at everybody to get out.
Well, there is a law pending to
I've
go to
heard.
4 a.m. Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely a step in the right direction.
So talk to us about how Detroit's influenced you and made you have the career that you've enjoyed.
Well, a lot of people call Detroit a techno city or a Motown city, but Detroit's really just a music city at the end of the day.
I agree.
Such incredible musicians of all caliber. I mean, even before Motown, blues and jazz. And we might not be the most international city in the world. Like, I love reggae, but we don't have the largest, like, West Indies population in Detroit. But people are still into reggae, and people are still into jazz, and people are still into new wave as well as house and techno, and I mean country too. And I feel like in a large way, our music. I mean, Detroit is a segregated city along race because of policies that were put in place. But musically, it's not nearly as segregated as other places. And that's really inspiring because there can be a lot more cross-pollination.
And so you were living in Chicago for a while. How was that different? And I know you're excited to get back.
Yeah, well, I'm really grateful that we were only in Chicago a year and a half. I mean, we really nested in because we just didn't know where we were going to end up with my wife's residency. But Chicago has a lot of venues for doing kind of like pub gigs. And that's a really good way to cut your teeth because you're at the mercy of
the local drunks,
the Cubs fans, and
Well, now that they've won, they're a little less salty, right?
Yeah, that's true.
And what kind of Afro house do they like?
What's funny is living in Chicago completely boosted my confidence to play weirder stuff more.
Really?
Yeah, this sounds completely counterintuitive, but just I would actually bring like more rootsy, like music from Mali and Morocco and Brazil, and there's. I don't know. It worked really well because it's just so different. I think if you're like too close to playing hip hop, they're like, "Why aren't you just playing hip hop?"
Right.
Oh, right.
And
Yeah,
if
you
just
need to
play
be
super left field
out of
stuff,
it,
they're
yeah.
like,
So
well,
where
it's
do
left
you
field.
find the music that you're? I mean,
Oh,
are you going
man.
online? Are you
I
in
dig a
Reddit
lot.
threads? Are you, deep in SoundCloud? What's?
So I have a few things I do there. I mean, first of all, Detroit record stores are really good.
Yeah.
So I try to keep up on what's going on in the stores because then if you like know what's in the bins, you can just keep going to the new arrivals bins.
So what are the record stores that you're going to?
Detroit Threads is one of the best record stores in the world. It's actually in Hamtramck, but it's incredible. It's huge. It's dusty. It's amazing. I really like Hello Records in Corktown. People's Records in Eastern Market is really good too. And I mean, those three keep me satiated. But the one thing, I mean, I'm sure you all have picked up on this, Detroit is kind of an island in some ways. So you can find records there that you're not going to find in any other city. But then I also have to import a lot of stuff from Germany and France and the UK. And I mostly just get that from like, there's just some big online retailers. And so now you can dig from your computer seat, just clicking through the clips on the...
It's all accessible
But
to you.
even if you find something online that you like, you want it in vinyl form.
Usually.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, unless if it's like a 5-track record and only one track is good. I'm not like just trying to amass vinyl for the sake of amassing vinyl.
Right.
Well, I don't know. I saw your moving truck. I think you are amassing vinyl.
Is it hard? Is there ever anything you can't get on vinyl that you want?
Yeah, then that's why I think being a purist of any medium is just kind of lame because some of my like best tunes, like they never came out on vinyl.
Oh.
So that's why it's nice to have those CDJs.
Yeah.
Peter, let me ask you about that because I've been to Las Vegas and at some club and they bring in some real A-list mainstream DJ and he walks in with a laptop and he plugs it in and the crowd goes wild. But you feel there's a different feel to actually playing on vinyl as opposed to just clicking on a laptop.
Yeah, you can rock a party on a laptop and a lot of people do. I find for myself personally what I do, I would like to play in Vegas, but I don't need to play for 300,000 people at like a mega club, you know what I mean? I think I'm just ultimately trying to create a more analog experience in such a digital world, like in such a consumable world and disposable world. I think it's okay for the parties I play to be inefficient, quote unquote, but if I'm lugging in 120 records, like so be it. And I really do think people of all ages respond to that. It's just kind of a time to slow down and maybe put your phone away and really just be present in the music and in the people around you.
Feels more real.
Yeah.
I have to give you kudos because you mentioned Ryan Dahl earlier about nothing good happens until 2 a.m. But when I was interviewing him at Movement, the first thing he said to me when he knew that we knew each other was, "Oh, Peter, he's the one who taught me how to play records."
Yeah, so I bought my first turntable from him. My first Technics turntable. I had some Newmarks before that, but Technics changed the game. So my first Technics I bought from him, and we started playing a party at Temple Bar together once a month called Sermon. And it was great. It was really great to play with him because we're kind of, he's more involved in kind of like a techno electro scene, and I'm kind of involved in more of a disco, Afrobeat house kind of scene. And it was cool to blend those two together. And yeah, I mean, I guess I was only able to teach him because I've had really good teachers. It is helpful. I mean, I'm 28, and a lot of folks my age and a little younger, there are exceptions, but a lot of them just haven't been able to play on records. And so
can I ask about the DJ, especially the vinyl DJ, as a performance artist? I mean, I'm a little older than you. I remember back when every hip hop act had a turntablist.
Yep.
Salt and Pepper
Yep.
had Spinderella. Run DMC had Jam Master
and
Jay.
they were known,
And they would come out. They'd almost do like an opening set where
for
they would
sure.
just rip up records for 20 minutes. Before.
it's so impressive.
Yeah. And then Dr. Dre came out and it became about the producer, and that kind of fell to the background. But I've also seen guys like the documentary, Scratch, and the Executioners were like
Jazzy Jeff and
all that stuff.
the Executioners are really talented.
It's like the Harlem Globetrotters.
Right.
And now I'm not sure where we are. I think it's Styrofoam Heads. I don't like what is the live performance aspect of being a DJ these days?
I would like to say that there shouldn't be a performance aspect of a DJ.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, I really would rather return to the roots of, I mean, people have always deified DJs. I mean, in
Yes.
Chicago, you had Frankie Knuckles and Ron Hardy. In Detroit, you had Ken Collier. In New Jersey, you had Tony Humphries. In New York, you had Larry Levan. But a lot of times they were really removed from the dance floor. Like they were up in catwalks and stuff, and they had such good sound systems that they'd play records that we all know. But if we heard them through those sound systems, it would sound like a different record. Yes, again, there was this cult of personality, but I do think at the same time they were really letting their music speak more than they were letting their personality speak. Or they were presenting their personality through the songs they chose and the lyrics in the songs they chose. And a lot of people would say you could tell if Larry Levan was in a good mood based on the songs
What he
was
chose.
playing, right? Did he get in a fight with his boyfriend before this set? Oh, listen to the lyrics. Sounds like he did. You know what I mean? It's really interesting. And I would posit that that's a better experience. I really do think if we want a performance experience, we should go see a band, or a comedian. That's just me, though. So, yeah, I kind of like the more discreet DJ booths, and I really respect how Underground Resistance back in the day used to wear ski masks and stuff. Like nobody knew who was
They
who.
were not anonymous.
Temple Bar is perfect for that.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
like that hidden cool booth.
Yeah, it's
in
like the
there,
only kind of retro DJ booth that I can think
town,
of in
yeah,
town. Where you're
yeah.
actually in a room with a door that closes and you're
Yeah.
looking through a window on the dance
Yeah,
floor.
it's kind of cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Temple Bar, actually, I don't know if you've ever seen Detroiters that on Comedy
I
Central.
haven't seen it, but I know it's filmed there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's
a lot of it is. Yeah.
every episode. I think they're in Temple Bar in some format.
And
but-
can you blame them?
I mean, right? Yeah. But I know we had a super fun New Year's Eve there once.
Oh,
and
man.
Yeah,
It's a riot.
it is good.
When you're spinning on vinyl, obviously, and this is what I'm trying to, you talk about old school and having to carry crates and that sort of
Yeah.
stuff. There's a limit to what you can bring with you to a gig, right? More
And that's what makes it awesome.
because you have to make. But honestly,
Like
this
in
is-
a
this is-
challenge.
This fascinates me because somebody who is more lazy and digital, maybe lazy is not the right word, but
I feel you.
they bring a flash drive with 100,000 songs on it.
Yeah.
You got to decide before you leave the house what records you're going to bring, right?
Yeah, I mean, that's the weirdest thing is I mean, look, it's 2018. I have a thumb drive that's 128 gigabytes
Right.
with everything. I have this is the disco jazz funk folder with all my favorite disco jazz funk.
In a little
This is
case
my
that says in
house
case of
folder.
emergency, break glass.
Actually, yeah, exactly. But when I go and play parties, I really do think I play better, and the people I care about who give me honest feedback, I think they would agree that I play better when I bring a reasonable amount of records and a smaller thumb drive with fewer songs on it.
What
You know
is a
I mean?
reasonable amount of records?
Between 40 and 70.
Really?
That's still a lot.
You got is that a hard decision? What you leave the house with?
That's a lot.
Yes.
See, that's not a lot to me. I mean,
I think it's still a lot for a couple hours.
How many records?
No,
do you spin
that's what I'm
out?
saying. Is I'm surprised that it's that you're making a decision and scaling
Right.
it down that much.
Oh yeah, it's
Sure.
definitely curated.
Because you're probably going through
Yeah.
easy 15 songs an hour.
So the
at
main,
least.
yeah, for sure. I mean, a lot of it comes down to. I mean, what's great is I have a residency at Motor City Wine, and I used to play 9 hours straight, and I would play the first
my
few
God.
hours. I'd play the first few hours just jazz, and that was really, really fun.
Do you throw in a long song for a bathroom break like radio DJs?
Yeah.
Okay,
You always got to bring a Fela Kuti record with you.
right.
Go get a
hit
beer,
play.
use the
Yeah.
restroom,
Yeah.
go catch up with people.
Get some tacos.
Yeah, exactly.
taco break.
Yeah, but I mean that's really special, and that's. I mean, that's what all those names that I rattled off in all these different cities, that's what they used to do. They would work 9 to 5, only it was
That was-
9 p.m. to 5 a.m.
Yeah,
It's the
on their
Malcolm
feet.
Gladwell 10,000 hours rule.
Exactly,
right?
to
Yeah.
perfect your craft.
Yeah, and I would just really like to return to that because, I mean, there is kind of the, again, cult of personality thing where there are DJs who can't really play more than an hour.
Right.
And
They
playing an
run out.
hour, it's like, well, first of all, I just think so many places only book people for an hour.
Ah.
And if I get booked for an hour, I just like all killer, no filler. You know?
Now you're talking radio.
Yeah, exactly.
Hot rock and flame throwing.
But sometimes, like, I'll be playing, and my wife, who has incredible music taste, and I bounce record, like, should I buy this record off her all the time? And she's like, yeah, you absolutely have to buy that record. But there have been times where I'll put on a tune, or I'll get into, like, a part of the night of, like, during a 3-hour set where she'll be like, what are you, like, she'll come into the DJ booth, like, what are you doing right now? I'm like, just trust me. Like, we're bringing it down just for a minute so that when we bring it back up, it'll be even higher than where it was before.
that's
and
good.
and if you have an hour, you can't really do that.
No,
Right.
no,
It's the classic
over.
push-pull with
Exactly.
the audience. You let the string out a little bit and then
Yeah.
pull it back in kind of thing.
Let's talk about the record label a little bit.
Yes.
And let's talk. I'm curious about A&R, about how you find acts. And are you testing them in DJ sets ahead of time, or are you going out? I mean, what do you look for when you sign an act to Rocksteady Disco?
Yeah, fortunately, my A&Ring has been quite organic. The first release was actually from the owner of Motor City Wine.
There you
That
go.
was back when I was playing, and that was actually on my own label. That was before Motor City Wine Recordings was even a label. I was playing there every Friday, 3 hours, and he just was like, hey, I have a bunch of unreleased stuff. You should play it. We had no interest in putting it out. It was like, this is just some
just play it.
exclusive stuff for you. Cool. I always love having exclusive stuff. And I would play it out and realize like, oh, this stuff is really good. We should press this. And so we did. It was very organic. He was so helpful because he offered to reinvest his artist fee into the label.
Hey, now.
Yeah. I mean, there's not a lot of money being made in vinyl record releases anyway, but it was very helpful in order to fund the next release. What happened for the second release is I was in my friend's studio. This is a guy by the name of Topher Horn. And he was just playing some stuff. Like, I just came over and he was playing. I was like, this is really good. What is this? He's like, just some stuff I'm working on. I was like, oh, what else are you working on? And he showed me 5 tunes. And I was like, all right, you need to finish these because I want to put them out. And Topher at that point was, and to this day, I mean, he does a ton of stuff behind the scenes, but I thought he really deserved to be in the limelight a little more. And then moving forward from there, I mean, I have had people send me demos because they know kind of the stuff I play, and they're like, I think this would fit your label. And a lot of times it does, a lot of times it doesn't. And in the case of our the release that's coming out at the end of the summer is a guy from Toronto who just hit me up out of the blue, and we just, I really like to get to know the artist before I put the music out because the music can be really good, but I also like to kind of make it a family if possible.
Right.
So, yeah.
And then what do you do to promote it, or do you even do a lot? Do you send
yeah.
it to key DJs? Like,
Yes.
what will you do?
So a lot of times before I put it out, I'll play it in some sets and see how it goes off. And then there's the whole, I mean, it takes about like 3 months to press a record in the States. I mean, there are some plants that'll do it a little faster, but I press in Detroit at a place called Archer, which is right on the Davison and Van Dyke, and I really like to keep it there. I mean, it's literally Detroit manufacturing. And so you gotta we're finally in a rhythm after 4 years of thinking 3 to 4 months ahead of a release schedule. And so when it's getting close to release time, I have a decent promo list now with some really amazing DJs who I never thought I would be an email contact or telephone contact with. And I send it to them and I say, if give me your feedback. If this speaks to you, I'd love a quote. I'm going to put it all into a one sheet. And when the record comes out, I say, supported by @Jazz, Jimster, Simbad, Soul Clap. Like, just go down the list of DJs who have been playing it in their sets before it comes out.
Right.
Yeah.
We were looking at that because we were looking at your website. We were talking about what is supported by mean.
Yeah, or championed by.
Right,
Yes, that's like, what does he mean by that? And I said,
liked on Facebook? What does this mean?
Yeah.
Like, I think it means bigger than that.
Yeah, it usually means, I think there are people who are fudging that a little bit. But I generally won't do it unless they explicitly give me a quote.
Right.
Yeah, for
Put
real.
this in your one sheet.
So you're not saying like it was Oprah's favorite thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Like those movie critics. The New York Times says that this is.
Yeah.
There has been, I won't name the DJs, but there's a couple of DJs who have bought the records all on their own, and like I've seen them 3 times in a year, and they're always playing the record. I'm like, you're going in the supported by list now.
Right. Well, yeah. Actions speak louder than words sometimes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, I see why there are dedicated label managers that aren't DJs. Because if you're running a big label and you're constantly doing the PR side of things, because that's kind of what we're talking about right now is PR.
Right. Sure.
And PR, especially in the States, is at least for what we're doing, this more kind of underground thing is kind of in a sorry state. So, like I said, I'm wearing many hats. I got the DJ hat, the producer hat, the A&R hat, the PR hat.
Right.
And this is interesting for Seth and me as former radio programmers, where we're used to record label reps coming into the station and saying, "Oh, this is the new Bruno Mars song, you've got to play it," or whatever it is. This is the other side of that, which is really interesting to me.
Yeah, me approaching you guys.
Well, but also the goal is always to have a hit and to sell a million records, and I don't sense that that's necessarily the goal of your record label.
Yeah, not necessarily, but what has been really cool is, WDET is a brilliant radio station.
Oh, yeah.
And Chris Campbell in particular has he does the Progressive Underground.
I love that show.
Yeah. He has supported, championed some of our releases and some tunes that I would not have expected, like 9-minute cuts that I didn't do a radio edit of. He won't play all 9 minutes, but he'll play like 5, which is a lot for radio.
Or maybe he had to go to the bathroom.
Yeah, actually, that's a really good
That's
point.
probably true. Yeah, it's like taco break.
Yeah, and so it's been great to work with Chris. That's just sending emails, but that's another cool thing about playing records is I really do think, or even if the radio DJs aren't playing their Technics 1200s anymore, mailing them that with a download code or mailing them a record and then emailing a link, I think it's really special. It just shows, again, in a kind of disposable culture, I'm very interested in tangible art.
Is there a community of club goers or people who go to your shows who will then go out and buy the vinyl, or is this like a Velvet Underground thing where you only sell 1,000 copies of the record, but everybody who buys a copy is a DJ?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's definitely more of the latter, I would say. We never really press over 500 records. We would if the demand was there, but the label has legs, and I'm very proud of where we're at. But if we sell 500 records, it's like, wow, we killed it.
But those 500 people who are buying them are influential people. It would be my guess.
Oftentimes, I would say 200 of them get sold overseas.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
Wow.
I would say over half are sold overseas, and that's just the nature of
culture.
Berlin is like the club capital of the world, right? And we sell a lot in Japan and England, but
plus they can play them till 4 a.m.
Exactly, at very least.
Yeah.
But yeah,
well, it's kind of like our podcast. Like we say, we don't have that many listeners, but the ones we have are quality listeners.
Right. But yeah, that's what's been cool about the label. I've been surprised. Like I literally just today, a guy I was in the teaching program with at Michigan State. I haven't talked to this guy in like 5 years at least. He just bought one of my records, and I was like, so and so just bought your record on Bandcamp, and I was like, hey, I'm gonna drop this guy a line. And before I could, he texted me like, hey, I just noticed you had a record label, and I decided to listen to all of it, and I bought a record.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So talk about how it's been to come back to Detroit and how you're feeling about that.
Well, I mean, on the one hand, I do really like the scene here. I mean, we are spoiled, but it's nice to be spoiled. I also just like Detroit as a city. Music industry aside, I just like Detroit. I like that there's more space to think and exist. And I don't really know if there is a more exciting city in the United States right now in terms of, I mean, it sounds basic and ridiculous, but like the buses are getting better and the roads are getting skinnier.
Yay, yes.
And
Bike
there are
lanes.
less crime. There's less crime.
The potholes are getting filled slowly.
Yeah, kind of, yeah.
Almost.
And it's just, that sounds so funny, but it's really cool. Like, here's the most Detroit experience I had, and this is how I knew I was home. I went to a amazing pop-up food thing called the Pink Flamingo.
I love that place.
Yeah, it's in North
Yes.
Corktown. We went there because we were listening to some records at Motor City Wine. A friend came in and was like, we just came from the Pink Flamingo. And I said, oh, well, me and my wife are going to go there now. We go over there, and the owner's running back with like a laundry basket full of greens. And she's like, I just picked these from down the street.
That's how
and I'm
they
like,
do.
you sure did. I love Detroit.
Exactly.
Like, she literally just picked these greens down the street.
Oh yeah, and they're just happy to talk with you and
Totally.
like, what would you like to try, and all these homemade sauces and stuff.
Yeah.
And then at their space in Corktown, they're like, well, we don't have a restroom, but just go down to the hostel. They'll let you in,
Yeah.
or the gas station. You know, it's very Detroit.
It's very communal.
Yes, yeah.
So.
All right. Well, Peter Croce, thank you so much for taking the time to sit there here and talk with us. I learned a lot from this, actually.
Yeah,
I
me
gotta
too.
be honest.
Yeah.
Like, this was
And I've
fascinating.
never really thought about it from your guys' perspective, so I appreciate you sharing that as well.
Well, no, and I know you.
I'm trying to sell more records.
Well, you and Becky both grew up here, and Seth and I didn't. And
word.
Seth and I have fallen in love with this city and made it our home.
That's
and,
great.
and hearing the different perspectives from people who've seen it go through much more than we have, it's really enlightening.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a Pollyanna about it. I mean, it can
Sure.
break your heart too, but anywhere can. And,
Yep.
I love the ways
Of
that
course.
it fulfills me.
All right. So tell us, what do you got on the docket for Rocksteady Disco and Motor City Wines? What are the new pieces of vinyl that you're dropping? And also, where can people see you perform?
Yeah, so it's a big week for both of the labels. We are Rocksteady Disco has a new record out, just came out by an artist named Blair French, really brilliant Detroit artist. He actually scored Detropia, it's an award-winning documentary.
right, yeah.
This is his second release that I've put out on Rocksteady Disco. It's called Public Park, and so far it's been supported by very big DJs. No, but jokes aside, Blair just has a really brilliant sound. He's hard to define, but it definitely he draws from a lot of Nigerian and Ghanaian music, as well as combining this very kind of gritty Detroit jazzy sound. And then Motor City Wine Recordings has a new release out. And the way Motor City Wine Recordings, it's only the second record that we've done on that label. And Motor City Wine as a venue is half jazz and half DJs. And so the releases are half jazz and half DJs. And those are so fun to do the PR for, because people you wouldn't expect are like, I love the jazz cuts. And people you wouldn't expect are like, I love the house cuts. You know,
Yeah, reaching new audiences.
Yeah, so that's a really brilliant up-and-coming producer by the name of Hazmat. He does
a great name.
I know, they're really
Yeah.
good. And he's really cool too, because he doesn't DJ. He like literally brings out hardware to his gigs.
Oh, wow.
And a vocoder. Like he does like some Zap style vocoder stuff on this.
Wow.
He was at Pride, I know.
Oh
and-
yeah, he played Pride. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So he does a really brilliant track called Music and Wine. It's like very on the nose, but it's good. We also got the Kumba Reunion Band, which is a really great Afro jazz group in Detroit. Arup Roy, who is from London, but we bring him into Detroit. He's honorary. And then we got the Hughes Smith Quintet, which is a really, really great 5-piece jazz group. It's like an up-tempo jazz funk kind of cut.
And where do people go to get it?
Yes, the best place to find that would be rocksteadydisco.com or motorcitywine.bandcamp.com. In terms of my sets, I play fourth Sundays at Motor City Wine. I do a party called Sunday Revival. And then I'll also be in Chicago next weekend to play. To find more information about those gigs, you can go on my website, petercroce.com. That's PeterCroce.com.
All right, Peter, thank you so much for stopping by. This is awesome.
Thank you so
fun.
much for having me.
The D Brief.
Your guide to Detroit's arts and entertainment scene.